You are such a dull wife, it's no wonder he cheated on you. You really were a useless stepmother, even as a housekeeper. Megan is grown now, so get out. I don't need you here anymore. Anger welled up inside me, the result of enduring this for 11 years. I picked up my mobile phone and called someone to come get me. I didn't want to stay here another second. I'm taking Laura. We'll make sure to give you a proper thank you later. Oh yes, a very thorough thank you is in order. My parents, who came to pick me up in a black car, said sarcastically to the two of them. Here's this. I showed them the divorce papers I had just signed. Seeing this, he tried to grab my hand to stop me, but I shook it off forcefully. I have nothing more to say to you. Goodbye. With that, I got into my dad's car, leaving behind the home where I had worked like a housekeeper for 11 years. My name is Laura. I used to work as an ordinary office worker at a company, but I met Matthew through a coworker, got married, and quit my job as he wanted me to be a housewife to support him. It was his second marriage, and he had a stepdaughter, Megan, from his previous marriage. It was hard to ask why they got divorced, but he was always kind to me since we started dating, making me believe that marrying him would bring happiness. Megan, who had been raised by Matthew's parents until now, seemed confused about having a new mom. She was only 9 years old, and I hoped we could get along well in the future. Gaining a new family, I was filled with hope. But later, I would regret my naive thinking. They were people who should never have become a family. Matthew, who works at a large company, has a high pride and a competitive nature, which has helped him become the head of the sales department. Since joining the company, he has been on the elite track and is expected to become an executive soon. When we got married, Megan was still in elementary school, but now she is a 20-year-old college student. Supporting these two behind the scenes is my role as a housewife. Although I understand this in my head, my treatment in this house is quite harsh by any standard. Sorry to keep you waiting, dinner is ready. I felt relieved to make it in time for dinner today. If I had been any later, there would have been harsh scolding waiting for me. However, as soon as Megan saw the food I had prepared, she started complaining. What's this, vegetables again? I'm so sick of these plain dishes. Can't you make something else? She twisted her face in disgust. These are seasonal vegetables. They're nutritious and taste great. No way, I don't want this. Is there any instant ramen? I'd rather eat instant ramen than this. Please don't say that. I chose this menu carefully to balance nutrition. Annoying. What, are you pretending to be my mom? Just give us a decent meal for once. You're really useless. She was clearly unhappy with the dinner I had prepared. This kind of thing happens every day. Additionally, Megan's rebelliousness towards me. Influenced by her father, Matthew. As Megan and I were arguing, Matthew came home from work. What are you yelling about? It's disgraceful. Hey, get my dinner ready now. He commanded in his usual high-handed manner. Silently, I started preparing Matthew's meal. Megan's rebellious attitude was still better than him, who could get physical if he was in a bad mood. Therefore, I couldn't argue back, no matter how frustrated I was, and had to comply. Ugh, this looks disgusting. What the hell is this? He grimaced as he looked at the dinner I had hurriedly prepared and served. Megan chimed in with, right, agreeing with Matthew. Please, you two? Don't say such things. What? What are you talking about? Are you saying it's my fault? I'm tired from work. Make something better. Make it again? I was planning to go grocery shopping tomorrow, so there are no ingredients left. When I said this, Matthew sighed loudly and dramatically. Ugh. You're so incompetent. Fine, I'm going to eat out. He then took his plate to the kitchen and dumped the food into the trash. Hey! What are you doing? I tried to stop his unexpected action, but it was too late. The meal I had carefully prepared with balanced nutrition for both of us was now a mess in the trash can. If he didn't want to eat it, he could have just left it there. Why does he always do things that hurt me? Tears welled up in my eyes from the sheer frustration. How many years have you been a housewife? You should at least know my preferences by now. Matthew scolded me harshly, as if commanding a servant rather than a housekeeper. Eventually, Matthew took Megan out for dinner. Left alone in the house, I resigned myself to cleaning up the untouched dinner. Criticizing my cooking was a daily occurrence. Their tastes changed with their moods. It wasn't that they disliked the meal itself, they just wanted to torment me. Why did I ever marry such a person? I sighed with regret, blaming my past self. But lamenting wouldn't change anything. At first, I used to argue against such unreasonable behavior. But no matter what I said, Matthew never reformed. Instead, his treatment of me as a housekeeper only escalated over time. This had been going on for 11 years. Their demands were always unreasonable, and refusing them led to severe scolding. No matter how hard I tried, I was never recognized or praised, and if they were even slightly displeased, I was verbally abused as if my character was being denied. By now, I had no way of knowing for sure, but it was probably the same reason his ex-wife divorced him. Matthew's attitude changed dramatically right after we got married, treating me not as a wife but as a housekeeper. And following his example, Megan began to mock me as well. I was nothing more than a punching bag for their stress relief. Wow! She's so pretty. Idols really have flawless skin. Yeah, because they're young. Unlike someone we know. One day, while I was preparing dinner, they were lounging in the living room watching TV. And Matthew glanced at me with that mocking, nasty smile. It's not just about youth. Look, this actress is the same age as Laura, but she's still gorgeous. Megan had never called me Mom, always addressing me by my first name. Matthew and I never had children. It wasn't a matter of physical issues, but rather his decision that since he already had Megan, we didn't need any more kids. By now, I was used to it and didn't think much of it, but sometimes, when I saw close-knit parents and children while out, it tugged at my heart. Life is unfair. Some guys get to marry beautiful actresses. You know, right? And compared to that, Megan glanced at me sideways. Yeah, she's given up being a woman. A woman who doesn't wear makeup is done for. No doubt about it, they both laughed loudly. The reason I don't wear makeup is because Matthew only gives me just enough money to scrape by. He sternly tells me, don't waste money, so I can't afford to buy anything for myself. Not even basic skincare products, so my skin is rough, and I can't dye my hair, which is streaked with gray. They laugh at my appearance, but who do they think is to blame for this? There's no one in this house who is on my side. Thinking that always makes me feel gloomy. Then one day, something happened that put an end to this unpleasant household. Geez, leaving your clothes lying around like this. Why are you so messy? While Matthew, who had just come home from work, was in the shower, I picked up the clothes he had carelessly discarded in the laundry room. Matthew has a habit of scattering his clothes around because he is so messy. If I leave it alone, the house just keeps getting messier and messier, so it's always my job to pick up the things Matthew scatters. I picked up the shirt that was carelessly thrown on the floor. Then, I noticed something strange. What's this smell? It's not detergent or body odor, it's a kind of unpleasant smell. It was the smell of a woman's perfume. The strong scent was coming from the clothes Matthew had just taken off. Wondering what this meant, I closely inspected the shirt and found lipstick smeared on the collar. Could this be cheating? My blood ran cold at the clear evidence of contact with another woman. I immediately confronted him as he came out of the shower. I expected him to make excuses, but Matthew's reaction was unexpected. "Oh, you noticed. I got careless because you hadn't noticed until now." "What do you mean by until now?" "You're really dense, you know. Even when I said I was working late and came home late, you didn't notice anything. Thanks to that, I could cheat as much as I wanted." For the past few years, Matthew had been saying he was busy with work and working overtime or on weekends, but it was all a lie. He was actually meeting his lover, and he admitted it without any guilt. While we were arguing, Megan, who had come home from college and heard what was going on, immediately took Matthew's side. "With such a plain wife, it's no wonder he cheated. You've been a useless stepmother who can't even be a good housekeeper." "That's horrible. I've been trying my best all this time. Don't you have any gratitude for that?" "Don't act so high and mighty. After all, you're just a stranger. Even if you call yourself mom, it's not like you're actually our mom. I've had enough of your plain cooking. We should hire a housekeeper for the laundry and cleaning." They both started saying whatever they wanted. "I don't need to be with you anymore. I've had enough of looking at your dull face. I never thought of you as mom anyway." In the end, Matthew and Megan's words made it painfully clear that I had just been used as a temporary housekeeper. I was never really married to him from the beginning. It took me 11 years to realize that, and it was unbearable. I couldn't stand it anymore. "Megan has grown up, so get out. We're getting a divorce." "Fine. I'll leave this house." Suppressing my rising anger, I calmly said that. "What's wrong? You're being awfully cooperative." "I understand how you both feel. It's clear that you don't want me in this house. But I think you'll regret this." When I said that with a firm attitude, both Megan and Matthew started laughing as if it were the most absurd thing they'd ever heard. "What's that? Sour grapes? I won't regret it, so just get out already." "Yeah, see ya, housekeeper." They didn't try to stop me. If anything, they were pushing me out faster. "Hello, could you come pick me up?" I took out my mobile phone and made a call. I didn't want to stay in this house for even another second. "It looks like my ride's here." "Goodbye, then." A car pulled up in front of the house after a short while. Ignoring the two who continued to disregard my presence, I opened the front door to get into the car. "Laura, you had a tough time. It's all right now." Seeing me on the street, Mom jumped out of the car. Seeing her tearfully embrace me, I almost started crying too. Then Dad, who had been in the driver's seat, also got out and rushed over to me. "Patience is one of your virtues, but you've pushed yourself too hard." Dad looked quite stern. I had explained a bit when I called, but he seemed really upset about how Matthew had treated me. "I'm sorry, Dad." Seeing my parents' faces for the first time in a while made me smile despite everything. However, Matthew and Megan appeared, looking puzzled. "What are you doing out here in front of our house? Get out." "Wait, why are you here? Who is this person? Dad, do you know them?" Matthew, who had been all ready to yell at me, turned pale. His gaze fixed on my dad. "Know him? He's the president of our company." Matthew, visibly shaken, said in a trembling voice. "Well, if it isn't Matthew. You've really treated my daughter poorly." Despite his calm tone, Dad was glaring at Matthew intensely. "Why is the president here?" "No way, Laura's dad." Matthew had never met my parents. That's because I had been disowned by Dad. When I told him I wanted to marry Matthew, he strongly opposed, saying, "I won't allow you to be with a man who has a divorce history." Looking back, it was Dad's way of caring for me, but at the time, I was too young and didn't listen at all. After being disowned, I had nowhere else to go but Matthew's place. Matthew had no idea that my dad was the president of his company because of that history. "Why didn't you tell me you were the president's daughter? If I had known, I would have," Matthew said in confusion. "Would have what? Treated me better if you knew?" Matthew swallowed his words at my remark. He seemed to have some awareness that he had been mistreating his wife. I knew I had to tell the truth eventually. But even if I revealed the truth to the two who looked down on me, I doubted they would believe me. Due to the constant harassment, I had become so stressed and withdrawn that I had given up trying to communicate with them properly. "Wait, what? Are you saying I was actually the grandchild of a wealthy family?" Megan asked, looking bewildered. But I immediately denied her words. "No, that's not it. You said yourself that you never considered me your mom." "Well, that was..." Megan hesitated. "All right, let's go, Laura. We've been taking care of you for a long time, so we'll make sure to repay you properly later. Yes, we need to give you a proper thank you." My parents said this sarcastically. Their expressions were not smiling at all. "Well then, thank you for everything. I'll just leave this here." I showed Matthew and Megan the divorce papers I had just written. With these papers filed, I would be completely free from them. That thought filled me with a sense of relief. "Wait a minute. Let's talk this over one more time." Matthew grabbed my hand, pleading, but I shook it off forcefully. "I have nothing more to say to you. We are strangers now. Goodbye." I then got into my dad's car and left what had been my home, where I had worked like a housekeeper for the past 11 years. From the next day, my mobile phone was flooded with calls. All of them were from Matthew, and the voicemail messages now exceeded 100. They ranged from tearful pleas to angry outbursts, all begging for reconciliation. But I had no intention of forgiving him now. I had already submitted the divorce papers yesterday, and our divorce was finalized. I blocked his number to avoid further nuisance calls. "Hey, Matthew! The boss wants to see you in his office. What did you do?" Matthew, who was working at the office, was suddenly told to go to the boss's office by his superior. Hearing this, his face turned pale, but he couldn't ignore the summons and reluctantly headed to the boss's office. "So you came. I thought you might run away." "I am deeply sorry for this. I am reflecting on my actions." As soon as he entered the office, he immediately began apologizing and explaining how he had been a failure. "I've been taking Laura for granted. I promise to change and treat her with respect from now on. So please, forgive me. Unfortunately, I didn't call you here to talk about that. Can you look at this?" Dad said as he handed Matthew a document in an A4-sized envelope. It was labeled as a report. "I had a private investigator look into your activities. It was reported that you were having an affair with a receptionist at our company. Is there any truth to this?" "That is, well..." Matthew began to panic. The accusation had hit the mark. "There's no use denying it. I have pictures too." Several photos were thrust at Matthew. They showed him with a young woman at a hotel, looking very close. "It's not what it looks like. She was just a fling." "A fling? That's even worse. I can't entrust important work to a man who toys with women. You'll be removed from the project you're currently leading." "This can't be. You seem to be quite capable at work, but there are others at your level." It's only natural to prefer someone who is serious both at work and in their personal life over a man with character issues. Dad is a serious man, which is why he despises lazy people. A man like Matthew is the type he can't tolerate the most. No, it's more like a man's virtue. Virtue, huh? That's how you destroyed your previous family, isn't it? You're really an incorrigible man. According to the background check done by a detective, the reason for Matthew's divorce from his ex-wife was the exact same as the abuse I endured, an extremely henpecked husband and Matthew's bad habit of womanizing. Unable to bear it any longer, his ex-wife tried to leave with Megan, but Matthew, who was concerned about appearances, prevented it, so she reluctantly gave up her. Then Matthew, who became a single father, completely handed over Megan's care to his parents-in-law and continued to play around with women as if he were single. However, his parents told him that he should raise his own child, and that's probably when he thought he could just marry a convenient woman. Completely deceived by him, I ended up being harassed for years not only by him, who couldn't even take care of himself, let alone do any housework, but also by Megan, who was spoiled from being raised by her grandparents. No matter how much you make excuses, I won't ease up on my punishment. Of course, the woman involved will also receive a fitting punishment. Give up gracefully. Hearing these clear words, Matthew hung his head. After divorcing him, I took refuge at my parents' home and have been under their care. I thought peace would finally come, but to my surprise, Matthew and Megan both showed up at my parents' home. I never told Matthew the location of my parents' home, but if it was the company president's house, it would have been easy for any employee to identify. As soon as he saw me, Matthew apologized, while Megan stood there with a sulky expression. "Laura, please. Come back." The desperate look on Matthew's face showed just how serious the situation was. "I took advantage of your kindness, Laura. I'll change from now on." It was an act worthy of an Oscar. I couldn't help but laugh at how a person who had looked down on me for 11 years could throw away his pride to protect his position. But no matter how pathetic he acted to elicit sympathy, of course, I had no intention of forgiving Matthew. Even seeing Matthew, who looked miserable and teary-eyed, didn't move my heart. On the contrary, I felt anger towards the man in front of me who changed his attitude as soon as he found out I was the president's daughter. "We're already divorced. It's a nuisance for you to show up like this. Don't say such cold things. We came to show our sincerity. Megan, apologize to you." Prompted by Matthew, Megan reluctantly, "I'm sorry," said in a small voice. It was like a child apologizing unwillingly after being scolded. It was not an apology an adult should make. "You don't have to force an apology. Megan, you're not really sorry, are you? That's not true. We genuinely want you to come back." Contrary to Matthew's passionate plea, Megan remained sullen. "Enough already. Why do we have to apologize to a woman like her? Oh, is that your true feelings coming out?" "No, it's not. It's just, Megan is just embarrassed." Trying to cover it up, it was clear that Megan, with her high pride, could never bear to apologize to someone she had always looked down on. "Anyway, just talk to the CEO and get him to transfer me back to the headquarters. Why should I do something like that for someone who is practically a stranger to me?" "Stranger? That's harsh. We were married for 11 years, weren't we?" His words made my face contort in anger. It was simply an unforgivable statement. "Married? Is that what you call it? Someone who threw my meals in the trash when they didn't like them, who yelled at me for the smallest disagreements, how can you call that a marriage?" Megan sneered, mocking my words. "Are you sulking over such petty things? I said I'd start treating you like part of the family. What more do you want? Hey, Megan. Stop saying unnecessary things. Just keep quiet. But Dad. Matthew hastily stopped her, but her expression remained unsatisfied. Clearly, the idea of apologizing to me was deeply unpleasant for her. Megan seemed to think she still had the upper hand, even at this point. But I was no longer willing to consider Matthew and Megan's feelings. What do you mean by that? I married Matthew, but I didn't marry you to be your mom. There's no way I can become family again with someone who hasn't even reflected on their past behavior. What? You seem like a different person. My fierce tone finally made Megan flinch. Raised by her grandparents and then asked to call a stranger mom after her dad remarried, I could understand her resistance. Her upbringing might not have been ideal. But Megan was already an adult. I couldn't sympathize with her twisted personality that she didn't even try to fix. We really feel sorry. Both Megan and I ended up taking advantage of your kindness. I don't need your apologies now. We're already strangers. Don't ever show up in front of me again. What? Even though we're lowering ourselves here? We've apologized this much. Can't you even forgive us? Megan screamed hysterically and aggressively. It was far from the attitude of someone who was genuinely apologizing. The reason you're apologizing is not out of genuine remorse, but to suck up to my dad, isn't it? I don't need such dirty apologies. Then what am I supposed to do? I've been taken off the project, and there are rumors I might be demoted or transferred. Matthew approached aggressively, but I coldly dismissed him. That's your own responsibility. Don't come crying to me. If you keep pestering me, I'll call the police. And if you continue, I'll tell Dad. If that happens, it won't just end with a transfer, you might get fired. Do you want that? Enough. What a woman. I will never forgive you. Hearing my words, the two of them hurriedly left, throwing parting insults. I had threatened them enough to ensure they would never show up in front of me again. To the family that continued to speak selfish words until the end, I said goodbye in my heart. After that, Dad pressured Matthew's affair partner to pay a settlement to me. The woman initially made excuses, claiming it was just a fling, but eventually admitted her fault and agreed to the settlement. Her anger then turned towards him, leading to a huge fight and their eventual breakup. After being removed from the project, he was unexpectedly transferred, just as he had feared. He was ordered to move from his prestigious position at the headquarters to a branch office in a small town. Why is an elite like me being demoted? He fumed, but Dad's fury was overwhelming, and the decision remained unchanged. His transfer meant that the family had to move from their current home. Megan, who had chosen her university assuming she could commute from home, was very upset when she heard about the move from Matthew. Are you telling me I have to quit college? That's absolutely not happening. I'll stay here alone if I have to. Stop being so stubborn. We can't afford for you to live on your own. Just do as you're told. Following the divorce negotiations, I demanded substantial compensation from Matthew for his infidelity and years of harassment. Dad had told him that refusal would mean losing his job, so Matthew reluctantly agreed to our terms. The transfer would significantly reduce his salary. Moreover, most of Matthew's savings would go towards the divorce settlement. He could barely cover living expenses, let alone her college tuition. The new job was far from their current home, making it impossible for Megan to continue attending her university. Therefore, she had no choice but to drop out of college. No matter how much we tried to make her understand, Megan refused to accept reality and screamed hysterically. I won't let that woman have her way. I'll go to college no matter what. Frustrated by her refusal to listen, Matthew left her behind and moved to the small town alone. Megan, determined not to drop out, took on more part-time jobs to fund her living expenses. However, juggling multiple jobs left her with little time for her studies. And she eventually failed to earn enough credits, resulting in her repeating the year. Desperate, Megan quit her low-paying part-time jobs and started working as a stripper. Though the strip club paid well, it was extremely stressful, and Megan began frequenting a male strip club to unwind. Her favorite male dancer was known for his manipulative charm, pitting women against each other to extort money. Initially, Megan had started stripping to pay for living expenses and tuition, but now her earnings were being spent on this man. She began skipping classes more frequently and eventually decided to drop out of college altogether. Instead of moving to the small town with Matthew, Megan continued working at the strip club. Despite this, she couldn't keep up with her payments and eventually fell into debt. It seemed only a matter of time before she took on even more demanding work. Meanwhile, Matthew's arrogance alienated him from his colleagues at the branch office. "Hey! I was once an elite at the headquarters," he would say to his coworkers, but now he was just another employee. His boasts fell on deaf ears. He was treated like a pariah in the office. Matthew, who once held a managerial position and was respected by his subordinates, had no prospects for promotion in the future. "The financial strain from the alimony payments I have to make from my divorce has left me living a humble life in a cramped apartment. This is all Laura's fault. Why am I the one who has to suffer like this?" He's apparently been complaining about me to everyone around him, but the reasons for his demotion are well known throughout the company, and no one is taking his side. Of course, no woman would be interested in someone like Matthew now, so it looks like he's destined for a lonely existence. Meanwhile, I'm still staying at my parents' home. Initially, I planned to find a job and live independently after the divorce, but my parents scolded me harshly for it. "You got into this mess because you always try to do everything on your own without relying on us. That's right. Stay here for a while and take it easy. You're so stubborn, honestly." My parents seemed to deeply regret disowning me. Taking advantage of their words, I've decided to stay with them for a while. In the midst of all this, I rented a floor in a commercial building and started a craft class, which had always been a dream of mine. Matthew used to mock me, saying, "What are you going to do with those useless crafts?" But my classes are popular, and I'm earning enough to support myself comfortably. Though I was betrayed by my family and ended up alone, I've now found freedom and a life where no one belittles me. The 11 years I spent with Matthew were like living in hell, but from now on, I'm going to live my life the way I want. "I'm marrying your best friend. We don't have a marriage license, and there's no distribution of property." "That's how it is, so best of luck to you. I'm taking the high-earning banker husband for myself." Right in front of me, my husband and best friend are laughing triumphantly, as if they've won some grand prize. It's shocking enough that my husband was cheating on me, but the fact that it was with my best friend is even more devastating. When he proposed to me, I was just a placeholder, a candidate for a housekeeper, nothing more. I let out a deep sigh and looked at the two of them with pity in my eyes. To them, I'm just a pathetic woman who can be tossed aside like a dirty rag. "Wait, you didn't know?" "Know what?" I won't even use endearing terms like my dear anymore. I decided to tell the smug pair the truth. I'll make them understand that when you look down on someone, it comes back to bite you in the end. I'm Victoria, 39 years old. 10 years ago, I met Thomas, a banker, at a singles event. He proposed, and we got married. I was worried that my plain appearance wouldn't be his type. But Thomas reassured me with kind words. "I wanted to choose a marriage partner based on what's inside. Please marry me." Moved by his words, I decided to marry him. However, our married life wasn't smooth sailing. More than anything, my mother-in-law Ashley didn't approve of me. "This girl has no charm," she sighed at our first family meeting. But Thomas defended me, saying, "Don't talk about the person I chose to marry like that." So I decided to do my best to win Ashley over. Shortly before Thomas and I started dating, his father Stephen had passed away. "She took advantage of him when he was down after losing Stephen. Otherwise, he could have found a much better girl," Ashley would grumble. She constantly made snide remarks about my plain appearance. Watching TV? What a cute girl. If only Stephen were here, that girl too, sigh. Thomas is so kind, he was tricked. She'd say things like. Still, I pretended not to hear and let it slide. Thomas would scold her, and he was kind to me, so our marriage lasted 10 years. One day, while shopping with Thomas at an outlet mall, I felt a tap on my shoulder from behind. "Hey there! Victoria, long time no see." "Kayla." The woman waving at me was Kayla, my best friend from middle school. Kayla was a lively, cute girl, and we used to hang out all the time. But her family moved away, and we hadn't seen each other since. Feeling nostalgic, we went to a nearby cafe to catch up. Surprisingly, she had maintained her beauty, not looking nearly 40. Kayla worked as a company employee. But apparently, she hadn't been lucky in finding a marriage partner. Marriage is all about compatibility, isn't it? I just haven't found the one yet. As she said this with a smile, Thomas was staring at Kayla intently. "So your name is Kayla? I never knew Victoria had such a beautiful friend." "Thank you." "What does Thomas do for work?" "He's a banker." The moment she heard the word banker, I thought I saw a sparkle in Kayla's eyes. "So he's a high earner. Victoria, you caught yourself a great husband. I want to get to know him better." "Of course. Why don't you come over for coffee sometime?" "Definitely. I'd love to." Somehow the conversation moved forward without me, but I figured Thomas was just trying to befriend my best friend. When Kayla came over for coffee, we discovered that she and Thomas liked the same video game. Delighted, Thomas invited Kayla to play the game together. From that day on, she started coming over to our house frequently. She'd stay for hours on end, using gaming as an excuse. And they both would ignore me. If I was in the same room, they'd ask me to go buy snacks or clean the bathroom, trying to get rid of me. "Thomas, you're so good at this game. Ha ha ha, I'm honored to be praised by you." I couldn't help but notice Kayla getting physically closer to Thomas, and he seemed thrilled. Ashley seemed to like Kayla. "Oh my, what a pretty girl, so different from Victoria." Welcoming her, Ashley's attitude toward me grew even harsher. Ever since reuniting with her, I started feeling strongly alienated. "Hey, aren't you and Kayla getting a bit too close?" "That's not true. Don't be jealous just because you're plain." Thomas wouldn't listen when I tried to point it out. They must have exchanged contact info privately because I got a message from Kayla. "Being too controlling will make you a disliked wife, you know?" With things like this, the more fun the two of them seemed to have, the more drained I felt. Thomas's behavior started getting stranger and stranger. Recently, likely at Kayla's suggestion, he bought a video game that could be played online and started playing it every night after work. That itself wasn't a problem, but whenever he got defeated in the game, he'd click his tongue and mutter things like, "These cocky brats don't know their place. Damn newbies dragging us down. Cut the crap." I really hated it when he says something like that. I knew he wasn't saying it to me, but just hearing such negative verbal abuse was subtly stressful. At least he wasn't taking it out on objects or me. For the time being, as soon as Thomas started his tirade, I'd escape to the next room and listen to music with earphones. It was a tolerable situation, but dealing with it day after day was exhausting. Why did Thomas insist on playing such a frustrating game for hours every single day? However, when Kayla was logged in and playing with him, he was in a good mood. I shouldn't have minded my best friend and husband getting along, but deep down I was dissatisfied. On top of that, Thomas's irritation seemed to be growing as his colleague at the bank started getting praised for landing a big contract. When Thomas would vent to me about work, "I see, that sounds rough," I'd give generic responses. I'm not well versed in the banking profession, but if I tried to give advice, he'd snap at me. Don't act like you know what you're talking about. But he wouldn't extend the same courtesy to me. When I'd consult him about a mistake I made, "You are so hopeless," he'd say with a contemptuous, condescending tone. This man had no intention of offering me kind words. Realizing this, I focused on him and stayed silent for a while, and he awkwardly went to the bedroom. Around this time, my relationship with Thomas started gradually deteriorating. Moreover, he started disparaging my cooking as well. "Stew and sautéed spinach again? I don't want to eat this kind of food anymore." "Don't say that. You're not getting enough vegetables as it is." "I don't want to eat this anymore. I'm going out to eat." As the distance between us grew, Thomas proportionately increased the frequency of his contact with Kayla. He seemed to be going out for coffee with Kayla often, which I found unpleasant. "Hey, are you going to see Kayla again? You're a married man, so I wish you'd think about it a little." "What's with you? Are you the one having dirty fantasies?" When I tried to stop Thomas, he just got in a bad mood. "I'm just giving her advice as a gaming buddy, so don't worry." Kayla said that, trying to reassure me, but an anxious feeling spread in my chest. To the point where I was worried he wouldn't drop his overbearing attitude. He started bad-mouthing people within earshot, you see. When we went to a family restaurant for a limited-time steak fare, a father with 2 children sat next to us. Both children were really cute, friendly, and greeted us when we made eye contact, creating a warm atmosphere throughout the restaurant. I was ordering from the waiter, but Thomas seemed to have overheard the family next to us and spoke to me in a somewhat condescending manner. "Looks like a single father. With that, he can't expect to earn much." "Hey! What are you suddenly saying that?" "Maybe his wife ran out on him. He's still wearing a ring on his ring finger, so he's probably hung up on her." A vicious look appeared on Thomas's face. Was he always the kind of person to make a face like this? "He probably has his own circumstances, so don't say things like that so lightly." He seemed to get annoyed when I cautioned him in a low voice. Next, Thomas spoke to the children. "You don't have a mom? That's so sad." The father answered with a wry smile. "She passed away from an illness last year." "I'm sorry for bringing up such a somber topic." "Of course she did. What, so she didn't run out on you? How boring. I'm leaving before the misfortune rubs off on me." Normally, you'd apologize for making them talk about such a thing. I was so embarrassed, my face felt like it was on fire. How could he say something like that? The exchange was overheard by the restaurant staff too, and I couldn't bear to stay there any longer. After apologizing to the family, I left the restaurant as desired. Fortunately, since we had just ordered, I was able to cancel before they started preparing the food. When we got home, I confronted Thomas. "Why would you say something like that? Did you not think it was rude?" "But it's the truth, isn't it? And what, are you siding with that poor family because you're fooling around with that father?" I was shocked that Thomas would say something so outrageous. He wasn't the kind of person to say things like this before. I was starting to lose sight of a future living with Thomas. When it rains, it pours. Ashley slipped and fell on a slope during her walk and broke a bone. The surgery was successful, but she had to do her rehabilitation at home. Automatically, it fell to me to take care of Ashley, but even with me nursing her, Ashley wouldn't drop her self-centered behavior. "Hurry up and bring me my food. You're such a slow wife." "Ashley, walking to the living room is part of your rehabilitation too." "Well, you're going to make a frail old woman walk. What a terrible wife." Ashley wouldn't move at all and tattled on me to Thomas for everything, so I got scolded by Thomas when he came home every day. "Hey, Mom can't move right now. Don't you feel sorry for her, having such an inconsiderate wife?" "But the doctor said if she doesn't move, her legs will stiffen up." "I don't want to hear excuses. Anyway, I won't forgive you if anything happens to Mom." Even though Thomas, her actual son, doesn't do anything himself. Honestly, it's a huge burden for me to take care of her alone. Thomas said my exhausted appearance was gloomy and stopped coming home, using work as an excuse. Even when I talked to Kayla, "You have to take good care of Thomas's mom. That's a wife's duty, right?" She'd say that and take Thomas's side. My mental stress kept piling up. After half a year, I had lost 50 pounds from taking care of her. Thanks to my care, Ashley can walk a little around the neighborhood now. I was originally on the plump side, but I suddenly dropped below average. It wasn't by choice, and it was a mentally painful way to lose weight, so looking in the mirror, rather than feeling thin, I'd say I looked haggard from lack of sleep. One holiday, I looked in the mirror and thought I had to do something about my miserable appearance. I lost 50 pounds in 6 months taking care of your mom. So, I want to buy clothes that fit me now. Could you watch Ashley this Saturday? You're home all the time, so whatever clothes are fine, right? You're not thinking of leaving mom with me to go cheat, are you? You should thank mom for improving your figure. This is what they mean by your jaw dropping. I've been taking care of Ashley and doing the housework for 2 months, but this man says I can't even leave Ashley with him for one day to go buy clothes that aren't baggy on me now or get my hair cut when it's grown out. Just what am I to this man? Do I have to endure this miserable feeling of not even getting a single kind word? Thinking that, tears welled up and I started sobbing. Thomas looked utterly disgusted and didn't comfort me. Hey, cut it out! You're being gross, old lady! It's time! Saying that, he left the room. And he came back with Kayla. Kayla clung to Thomas's arm and looked down on me. It clearly wasn't the behavior of a normal acquaintance. And then Thomas said something outrageous. I'm marrying your best friend. I never submitted the marriage license, and there won't be any division of assets. Thomas raised his chin with a triumphant look, and Kayla said, That's how it is, so best of luck to you. I'm taking the high-earning banker husband. Looking smug. It was shocking enough that Thomas was cheating, but the fact that it was with Kayla, who I thought was my best friend, was even more devastating. Kayla had gotten close to Thomas to snag him, a banker, after all. She kept saying things Thomas wanted to hear to get on his good side. Thomas, you're so good at games too. If you thoroughly beat those selfish kids, you'll be even cooler. With your background, no one can act high and mighty. She kept flattering him like this, so Thomas got carried away and became selfish. And when he wasn't coming home, Kayla was preparing his favorite foods and winning him over through his stomach. I had my doubts about Thomas's recent transformation, but it finally made sense. What do you mean, you didn't submit the marriage license? To be honest, I lived with you to have you do the housework and take care of my mom. If a good woman ever showed up, I could switch over without any damage since there's no record of marriage or asset division, right? Thomas gleefully revealed his scheme. Actually, I wanted to kick you out as soon as I met Kayla. But my mom's bone fracture was an irregular event, so I kept you around. But if you're going to defy me this much, I'll have you leave the house. Since we didn't submit the marriage license, we can get married without a previous marriage on record, and we don't have to waste money on dividing assets with you. Thomas, you're a genius. Apparently, after our wedding ceremony, Thomas didn't submit the marriage license to the city hall. City hall is far, so I'll submit it for you. I was a fool for believing Thomas's words. After arguing with me, it seems Thomas went to City Hall with Kayla and submitted their marriage license. Of course, since he hadn't submitted one with me, the two of them easily became husband and wife. Kayla decided to quit her job. As if to rub it in my face, Thomas took out the marriage license we had filled out 10 years ago and ripped it to shreds. Kayla, why did you betray me? We were best friends, right? To be honest, you were just there to make me look good. Someone like you doesn't deserve a high-earning husband like Thomas. There weren't many good men at those singles events, you know. Guess it just goes to show there was a woman better suited for me out there. So get out. We're starting our real newlywed life. I see, I was the only one who thought we were best friends. A quiet laugh wells up from the back of my throat. Finally facing reality, huh? So, what are you gonna do? You don't have much money. Will you be homeless or stay in a hotel? Oh no, how sad. Well, you were in an unbalanced marriage, so it can't be helped. I let out a deep sigh and looked at the two of them with pity in my eyes. Wait, you didn't know? Know what? I won't even use endearing terms like my dear anymore. I decided to tell the smug pair the truth. I have assets of $1 million. So, you don't need to worry about my livelihood. Looks like you've finally lost it. When Thomas heard my words, he burst out laughing, likely thinking it was just sour grapes. It can't be helped. Considering how I've been until now, it's only natural he'd think that. I haven't lost it. And I knew you hadn't submitted the marriage license. Huh? One day while I was caring for Ashley, I cleaned Thomas's room since he wasn't coming home. That's when I found something like a wooden safe in the back of the closet. He must have been using a pretty old one because the lid opened while I was cleaning and I saw inside. The contents were a marriage license with our names filled in. Why in the world was this here? Wasn't it supposed to be submitted to City Hall? If he had simply forgotten to submit it, it wouldn't be stashed away so securely like this. My mind was in a state of confusion. I couldn't just ask Thomas about it, and I didn't want him to get suspicious, so I put the marriage license back where it was. While I was trying to figure out Thomas's intentions, I overheard Ashley talking to Thomas on speakerphone. So, are things going well with that girl? Yeah, I'll be kicking out that wife of mine soon. I see, you're a smart one. Still, to not notice you didn't submit the marriage license, she really is a dull wife. But thanks to that, our precious assets won't go to her, so it's fine. I couldn't believe it. I married Thomas because I loved him, but he never intended to from the start. Using taking care of you as an excuse, she's become such a mess with frizzy hair and stains everywhere. Glasses and no makeup. To be blunt, her appearance has gotten even worse. Someone like that is a failure as my wife. Hearing those words from Thomas sent a chill down my spine. The voice coming through the speaker was far too cold. This solved the mystery of the marriage license in the safe. At this rate, I'll be kicked out in tatters. Thinking that, I bought a used computer and started honing my skills to become independent. Besides taking care of Ashley, I spent almost all my time at home fiddling with the computer. I bought programming textbooks at the bookstore, pored over them, and put them into practice. In no time, my table was filled with books on programming languages. I must have had an affinity for programming languages like Java and C++ because I started developing apps. While learning advertising techniques for social media, I released several small one-off games that became hits and started generating revenue. By strategically distributing gameplay videos, I started earning ad revenue from there as well. Thanks to that, I started receiving programming requests from companies. As my income surpassed the scope of a sole proprietorship, I created a company in my name and put the money there. And it's not like an app is finished once it's released to the world. Maintenance and frequent updates are necessary, and it seems my diligent handling of that is well received. Even while being worked to the bone by Ashley, I had a goal, so I was able to persevere until now. I also managed my savings. I had deposited them in Thomas's bank, but I used online banking, so I didn't have to go to the bank in person very often. I had asked the bank not to tell Thomas, so he didn't know I was earning money. With this, I could leave this house whenever I wanted. And half a year later, Thomas revealed that he hadn't submitted the marriage license. When I explained this far, Thomas was flustered. Huh? What? I didn't know that. I didn't tell you. But after being treated like this, I can't afford to be considerate of you. Maybe I should tell the bank about the money situation and have them let me withdraw it all at once. Wait. If you do that, I'll get in trouble. Thomas tried to cling to me, but I no longer had any feelings for him. Actually, you deceived me by hiding that you were earning so much. I'll sue you. It's super unfair that you have that much money. I pretty much took care of your husband, so give me compensation for that. The two of them must have lost all common sense somewhere, taking such a brazen attitude. That's not even funny. And Thomas, you and I were strangers to begin with. Even if it was a common law marriage, I have your deeds written in my diary and I recorded that conversation just now on my smartphone. You can't touch my assets. Saying that, I took my prepared luggage and left the house with the two of them screaming behind me. After that, I received a barrage of phone calls. From Thomas, a voice mixed with a wheedling tone. Hey, you worked hard to be recognized by me, right? That money, if you're with me, we could put it to more effective use, don't you think? From my best friend, a condescending voice. Hey, you were working hard because you have no charm. But give me $1 million as a gift. There's a brand bag I want, Yusita. And from Ashley, a voice scolding me no matter what.
Wait, what is this? I had absolutely no idea you were earning money. Pay me $100,000 in compensation for lying.
Just listening to it was exhausting. Please do the housework and everything else yourself from now on. I won't help. According to you, I'm a woman who tricks men by preying on their weaknesses, so it's best we cut ties, right?
How dare you? What an impudent wife!
I'm not your wife anymore. Also, part of the living expenses was my earnings, but I'm stopping that too. Thomas hates giving money, but do your best to make do somehow on your own. While taking care of Ashley, there were various expenses, but Thomas hardly ever tried to pay. With me gone, their standard of living will drop considerably. Will Ashley be able to endure that? One more thing, Ashley's leg isn't fully healed. Thomas didn't even come to the hospital visits, so he probably doesn't know, but Ashley's muscles have weakened, and if she doesn't move a lot, she'll become bedridden. I encouraged and pleaded with Ashley to get her to walk somehow, but Ashley loves slacking off to begin with. Thomas will find it a pain and won't do it, and there's no way Kayla will lend a hand. Ashley, it's best to have you walk as much as possible. I won't be responsible if you can't walk anymore.
A threat? Thanks to you, Mom is doing well.
Thanks. That's how I was mocked at the time of divorce. Thomas probably thought it was just sour grapes on my part. I gave my warning, so it's no longer any of my business. Later, it seems Thomas tried his hand at investing but failed. How do I know? Because Thomas told me he needs a $7,000 margin call by 3 p.m. today, and it'll be pretty bad if he can't come up with it, so he wants me to lend it to him. When I flatly refused, persistent texts and calls came.
Please! You have money, don't you? Do something! This is what you get for messing with investments without proper knowledge. My money isn't there to cover your screw-ups. But if someone like you can earn $1 million, there's no way I can't.
Just how far did he look down on me? I don't want to exhaust myself mentally for Thomas's sake anymore. I tried to push back. Impossible. Against his demand with a firm.
Then at least lend me money. I'll do it right this time.
No. There's no guarantee I'll get it back, and I don't want to get involved any further.
Don't fuck with me. Don't act so high and mighty.
I was so stunned when he started shouting at me after his crying tactic failed that I just hung up on him and ignored it. I did record part of it and consulted the police, just in case. It's not uncommon for divorced spouses to persistently pester their ex when they're struggling financially. We'll increase patrols, just to be safe. They assured me of that, so I felt relieved for the moment. By the way, with stocks, if you don't pay the margin call, you'll be forced to settle. If the settlement puts you in the red, it becomes debt. Well, if the trades you're doing keep falling, putting in a margin call will just make your debt swell even more. So there are times when it's better to force a settlement without putting in a margin call. If the value recovers, it's better to put in a margin call, but I doubt Thomas understands that balance. If a forced settlement isn't enough, it can turn into debt, but there's also a chance it won't. But judging from how flustered he was, I think it's a case of him using money he shouldn't, like living expenses. I also invest with my accumulated funds, so I have some knowledge. You won't suffer huge losses with stocks as long as you don't buy or sell in strange ways. But if you try to make a lot of money in a short time, it becomes like gambling. Thomas isn't the patient type or the type who can see ahead. If I were beside him, I probably would have opposed it and stopped him, but it's no longer any of my business. A week later, I was considering buying a new car to cut expenses. But when I logged into my online bank, I had a feeling the balance was a bit lower. This was clearly strange, so I headed to the bank. When I checked my account at the counter, the staff hurriedly retreated to the back. And then the branch manager came out in a fluster. "Ms. Bill, we deeply apologize, but upon confirming the facts..." The manager wiped the sweat from his brow and told me that Thomas had illegally logged into my online account, withdrawn my assets, and transferred them to his own account. Thomas was certainly in a position to log into my account information, so he probably tried to secretly skim some to cover his failed investments. He should know that doing something like that as a bank employee wouldn't end well. The branch manager called Thomas in, but Thomas was sullenly defiant.
But that money belongs to me as her husband, right? Her hiding it until now is the malicious part. So I confiscated it. You got a problem with that? You and I were never really married in the first place. Don't go spouting convenient nonsense now. We're complete strangers. This is the crime of embezzling a customer's money. What the hell? Don't get cheeky. Branch manager, you don't have to listen to her. I just received it as divorce compensation.
Then the branch manager's shouts echoed in the meeting room.
What on earth are you saying? Do you not think this is outrageous? Huh? What? Did I do something that bad?
On top of embezzlement, Thomas spewed words that were far too rude to me as a customer, so the branch manager scolded him. Of course, this wasn't something that could be hidden, so they decided to contact the police. Only then did Thomas's face turn pale as he started to panic.
What? The police? Why? I've been working for this bank all this time. Did you really think you could get away with pulling something like this?
There was an exchange of shouts in the meeting room, and in the end, Thomas was taken away by the police. Thomas's assets couldn't cover it, so the bank shouldered part of the repayment. It became enough of an incident to be covered in the local newspaper, and he was fired. He had gained trust in the neighborhood as a banker, but that all went down the drain, and apparently he couldn't live in that house anymore. With no money, he moved to a cheap apartment while looking for work. But since his real name was published in the newspaper, companies that found the article turned him away at the door.
If you had just stayed quiet, I would have been rich by now. My career is in shambles. I didn't even get severance pay.
I blocked his calls, so he sent resentful texts one after another, but I ignored them all. Kayla also persistently contacted me.
You're not doing some petty harassment, are you? Thanks to you, being a banker's wife is over. You're looking down on us because we don't have money, aren't you?
I guess their mental dictionaries don't include the word personal responsibility. By the way, with the branch manager's sincere apology, I decided to continue keeping my money at that bank. He was the one at fault, after all. I decided to forget about Thomas and the others for the time being and focus on my own work. When I started investing the money I earned, it must have gone well because now it's around $5 million. My workload started becoming more than I could handle alone, so I recruited staff online. Then graduate students and skilled engineers gathered. Among them was a familiar face, the single father. The one Thomas had mocked at the family restaurant back then. He said he started working as an engineer so he could take care of his children while working from home.
I'm still far from being able to replace their mother, but I still want to make sure my children don't have to struggle.
I apologized for Thomas's former rudeness. He said those words actually motivated him to work even harder, forgiving me, but at the time, I was so embarrassed my face felt like it was on fire. While I was diligently running the company, I ran into Thomas by chance on my way back from a client. His appearance had changed so much, I didn't realize it was him at first. When he saw me, his eyes lit up and he suddenly started pleading with me in the middle of the street.
Victoria? It's Victoria, right? Please! Listen to me. What the? Stop it.
Aware of the eyes around us, I decided to hear Thomas out at a cafe near the police box. In the end, his goal was to demand money and get back together. Apparently, even when Thomas manages to find a job, it doesn't go well. He got addicted to an online game he was hooked on and developed a habit of verbal abuse, so he ends up using rough language in the real world too. I warned him so much, but it must have become a habit he can't quit. Moreover, his daily meals are miserable.
All natural.
And
Authentic high-end.
all she can make on her own are oily dishes with olive oil and cheese. What she had been preparing until now was just frozen foods arranged colorfully. As a result, Thomas is obese with acne-riddled, oily skin. I had heard that eating greasy foods makes acne worse, so I had been honing my healthy cooking skills. Meals with too much fat are tough on elderly people like Ashley, and even for young people. Eating it every day is a shortcut to chronic illness. He had become impressively unhealthy. Kayla herself splurges and eats out all the time. It's expensive, so no matter how much they work, it's hard to save money. Plus, olive oil isn't cheap enough to buy multiple bottles. Kayla started using vegetable oil and sesame oil as an arrangement and adding vinegar because it's healthy, making the flavors even more disastrous. Kayla, who planned to enjoy a celebrity lifestyle after switching places with me, had completely gone to seed. She got fed up with her overweight, middle-aged husband and cheated with another man, but the wife found out and is apparently demanding compensation. With compensation payments and mounting expenses, the in-laws ended up in debt.
If you weren't around, I'd be enjoying a fun retirement by now. If Victoria were here, we'd be billionaires.
Ashley makes snide remarks to Kayla every day, and their marriage is in shambles. Kayla's former beauty is nowhere to be seen. Ashley too, if she tried hard at rehab, she could regain mobility, but she slacks off because it's a pain, so she's become unable to walk again, making her even more incapacitated. Rather, did they really think I would provide financial assistance after being so spiteful?
I can't cook, and just looking at Kayla's cooking makes my stomach shrink. Mom can't move anymore, we have no money, my body is being torn apart. Help me!
I do feel sorry for him, but I haven't forgotten being told my cooking was bland. By the way, apparently the soup gets an inch-thick film of oil on top, so the greasiness must be pretty bad.
No way. I'm not a caregiver, housekeeper, or ATM. Then hire me at your company and make me an executive. How shameless can you be?
I rejected Thomas's pleas. Victoria sighed as she walked out of the restaurant, wondering how anyone could possibly want to return to such a hellish marriage. Thomas, with a look of desperation on his face, pleaded,
Yes, I cheated, but it was only one time. If you round it to the nearest whole number, it's basically 0. So technically, I haven't cheated at all. Let's start over as husband and wife. I'll dump that woman, I swear.
However, as expected, since he faked the submission of a marriage license, what he said was wrong. Victoria ignored the single father and walked out of the store. Suddenly, Richard started shaking and convulsing. If she still loved him, she would have rushed to his aid or called an ambulance in a panic. But as she observed him with a cold gaze,
Help me!
He cried out, glancing at her from the corner of his eye. She was so exasperated that she couldn't say a word. When Victoria stepped outside, he frantically chased after her but retreated when she entered the police car. Victoria had recorded her conversation with Richard just in case and sent it to Kayla.
He said, let's get married again, but we were never married in the first place, and your husband is contacting me. What? He's betraying me.
It's ironic that Kayla is acting strange, considering she also cheated on Richard. Despite being newlyweds, Kayla and Richard's relationship seemed to have soured quickly. I hired new security guards and deleted their contact information. Thanks to stocks and investments, my company is now operating smoothly without facing financial difficulties. The single father employees can apparently cover their children's tuition and living expenses with their salaries from the company. Although her days are filled with hard work, honestly, her life is much more fulfilling than when I was with Thomas. Boss, I need you to look at this program.
All right, I'm coming.
Victoria put her worn-out programming reference book in her desk drawer and headed over to her subordinate.